Hi everyone, thanks for tuning in. This is a tutorial on Caprice number 22 by Bartolomeo Campagnoli for viola. I'm Giles, and if you are one of my subscribers, you might know that I have all 41 of Campagnoli's Caprices recorded and on my YouTube channel and my website, thecampagnoliproject.com. So now I'm moving into a new phase with the project, which is I'm going to be doing tutorials on some of the Caprices and possibly some technique tutorials for the viola. So if you have suggestions or things that you want to hear from me, please let me know. I'm always happy to oblige your requests as much as I can, since that is the whole point of what I do. I love sharing my knowledge with other violists and getting feedback and hearing your videos as well. So a couple things before I start. It'll be helpful for you to go to thecampagnoliproject.com and just check out my annotated manuscript. Actually, it's the original engraving of these pieces. So you'll find measure numbers, you'll find bowings, all kinds of things. I recommend using these copies, which you can also find on IMSLP without my annotations. You can find them, and you'll find them very different from the well-known Primrose edition, which has some edits that were not in the style of the late classical period. So I recommend using those. And then the other thing is, if you want to hear a full performance of this piece, again, you can check that out on the link below. I have actually 2 recordings of this, which I'll talk a little bit about later. So we'll just dive right in. There are 3 main technical sort of difficulties in this piece. The first one is trills, which we have from the outset of the piece. The second one is bowing string crossings, so sort of a staccato martelet type stroke with wide string crossings. And the third one is oscillating bass notes and double stops. So let's just go through the beginning. We'll go through the piece, we'll hit those 3 spots, and then a couple others that I thought would be helpful to bring to your attention. So right from the beginning, so the trills, it's really important to me that the trills are done right, and to me they should be done from the upper note. And so if you want to hear the difference of what it sounds like to do them from the lower note, you can check out my first recording of this, where I was not as informed on period style of the late classical period, and I trilled from the bottom note. But what it does is it just makes it sound really redundant, because then you have just 3 Fs hammered out in a row on that first measure, instead of the trilling from the upper note kind of gives you a little bit of variety right away. So we have some 4th finger trills. So I'm just going to use the 4th finger trill as the example trill to work on, because that's the hardest one. So that's on the 2nd measure. And we're starting from the note A on the trill, because that's the upper note. So what I've done, I've actually made the trill into just a set of 30-second notes. So 1 and a 2 and a 3 a da da da, right? So that just makes it simpler for the math and for your fingers. And of course, the best way to practice trills is with rhythms. So we would start from the A and or 1, 2, right? And so I'm holding on to that upper note as the longer note, and then I can switch it. Sorry. And so that gives me that kind of flick that I need with my trilling finger, right? And then we can do longer rhythms, right? And then I could do the second note. That's a hard one. right? So that kind of gives you the dexterity. The other thing you want to make sure to do is at the beginning of your trill to really hammer that note with your trolling finger. So you're kind of really giving it weight, and that makes it easier to kind of establish the strength in that finger. The last thing that you should do here is just bring your left elbow in to give that fourth finger some leverage, okay? And I'll talk again about the left elbow again later. That's something that I will talk about a lot because it's so important on the violin and viola, but especially on a big instrument like the viola, our fourth finger is short. It needs this elbow to come in just to give it the right angle to play at. The last thing with this kind of a passage is we want to stay in the upper half. Okay, so that gives us room to do those up bow accents, which are a little awkward, right? Campagnoli does a lot of sort of backwards bowings in these pieces, which gives you a lot of versatility once you get those weird bowings. They weren't so weird back then. Just to give you the sort of dexterity in your right arm. Okay, so the next spot is the string crossing section, and that the first one is at measure 9. And so here, I'll just play through it so you can hear. Okay, so the way to practice this is stopping in between the string crossing change, the string crossing. So I'm going to stop on the first note. I'm going from the A to the C string, so that's a big leap. I'm gonna stop after I play that note, rotate, make sure I have my lower note, and then play it. And it can be as long of a pause as you want at the beginning, just so that you're really feeling where you're going in your bow. And so that one wasn't clean, right? So I'm getting lost in my own thoughts here. So basically, we want to make sure we have the right string. We want to make sure that we have the left hand in tune. All very basic stuff, but it's something that as we get more advanced, we tend to think, okay, I know how to play an F, like whatever. And we don't really analyze what's happening in that particular moment in the piece. And it might be going along fine until you get into a performance situation, right? And we've all been there where all of a sudden our bow feels like a piece of spaghetti and we just don't know what to do. And so that's where the analysis really comes in handy. Just going through with a fine-tooth comb, saying, okay, I'm crossing from the A string to the C string, and I'm gonna feel that tension before I pull my bow because I have an accent. And make sure my left hand is set, make sure my bow is set, and then also making sure I get all the way up to the tip, and then rotating back over. So we don't want to hear any noise in between the crossing. So that is just a rotation without pulling or pushing the bow, right? So those little details are going to help it sound really, really clean. All right, so another spot that has trills before we move on to our final technical landmark is at measure 16. This we have the trills returning, but now they're displaced by just a 16th note. So the changes happen very fast between the sforzando notes and the trills. So I'll play it for you. So it's going to be a really quick motion, obviously, with your left hand. Again, staying out of the tip, of course. The other thing about this, so we always get out to the tip. Since we're trilling from the top, on that first measure, you have a D here, and then your trilling note is the G, right? So it actually forms a fifth with your third finger, and you should definitely block that fifth, cover the fifth. So if you don't have very fat fingers or really skinny fingers, you can just kind of roll your finger over. I finally figured out a way. I thought for a long time that I couldn't cover my fifths. It turns out I can. I just had to figure out how it worked for my fingers. And so it might mean like a sort of bad third finger position. So again, here you have another fifth. So cover that fifth. You definitely don't have time to pick up your finger and place it over. All right, so now for our final technical area at measure 20, we have these oscillating bass notes, and then we also have 16th note double stops, so that's fun. So here, and then it goes on like that, but for the oscillating bass notes, so we want to feel like we're playing on pillows here, and that our bow it feels like a curved, squishy thing. So instead of being angular about it, right, where you're really dipping down, you're just kind of curving down to the note, and like expecting that elasticity of the string to kind of catch you at the right time. And so that's going to obviously involve a lot of slow work, but what it also involves is taking the left hand out of it so you can just feel the strings. So let's do that. Sorry, my strings are a little bit out of tune, but you can hear how I'm just kind of gently rocking down. So that's going to have to happen at a very slow tempo. And then the next measure, once you're feeling comfortable with that, now we have these double stop 16th note. So what you can do here, you can practice playing on just one string, but the left hand is still ghosting the, say I'm playing on the bottom string, I'm ghosting the top note in my left hand, but I'm not playing it, so. And then I can do the same thing with the upper note. So that's one way to practice it. The other way would just be to take out the bottom or the top completely. But then lastly, rhythms are a great thing to do anytime you have left-hand passage work, right? So. And so on. So I'm just looping that measure. I would recommend with these Caprices, if you're a true blood violist or whatever you want to say, like me, I started playing viola. I never played violin until later in my life when I decided I should probably learn that too. You might have not gotten a lot of as much technique training as a violinist had. And so I know that was certainly the case for me when I was young. And so a lot of these things, I knew about them, but I don't feel like I drilled them in the way or felt the pressure to drill them in the way so that a violinist would. So take these Caprices as an opportunity to treat yourself as a, you know, complete violinist that has to know all the tricks in the bag, because as violists we should know them too. All right, so all right, so the next spot, so those are the three main areas we covered. If you want to go through, there are a few more spots that I've kind of picked out as places of interest and particularly challenging. The next spot is at measure 35. So we have this oscillating bass note pattern coming back, but this time, sometimes you're playing, the oscillation happens on the lower string, and sometimes the oscillation happens on the upper string. So that's just a spot to be able to identify what is happening when, because it's another place where you can just get tripped up in an unfamiliar performance situation, or you're playing for your teacher or whatever. So so it changes, right? It changes every two or three like groups of eighth notes. The pattern changes. But the trickiest one for me when I was practicing this was definitely measure 38. For some reason, it just always got me, and I think it's because you're switching from the G and the D string, as I said, with the lower note oscillating, to the A and the D string set with the A string oscillating as the upper bass note. So that was for some reason incredibly hard for me for quite a while. So I just had to drill it over and over again, right? And really kind of exaggerating the and that one I really was like making big waves with my arms, because on the A string you can do that. You have all the leeway that your instrument will give you until you hit it with your bow, right? So sometimes exaggerating those motions, right? So I'm still feeling it cushy, but I'm making like big waves with my arms. Okay, so the next, the penultimate spot is at measure 54, which is another string crossing spot with your eighth notes. But actually what I found to be hard about this, and what I discovered to be hard about this once I finally analyzed it, was that sometimes your first finger is not always in the same place. So we're starting off from a pretty high position. I think it's like 5th position or something. And so you're up there and you're kind of counting on your first finger to be your rock, right? And it just stays the same. But in this passage, the first finger does not stay the same. And that's starting at the first measure of that. So I have a B flat, and then I have an E, a half step higher. And for some reason it was enough to throw me off for a little while, until I finally realized, okay, I really need to make sure that that is a half step higher, until I just identified it in my head. Even though I knew what it sounded like, it was just not really in tune. So there's a couple of those spots. And then here's the next one. Okay, so measure 54 and then 55, 56, 57 are the two spots where you have to move your first finger, and it's a little precarious with the intonation. Okay, so the last spot of interest was at measure 67, and I'm going to start from measure 66 to kind of explain why this part deserves extra attention. So I'll play it for you, and then I'll show you what I mean. So in this passage, what happens at measure 67 is we have a chord, a G minor chord, where you actually, what needs to happen is you have to grab your second finger in conjunction with the G and the D, even though you're not playing it right away, because there's not time to get it later, and it kind of gets tripped up with the other fingers. And so it's just going to mean bringing your elbow in, grabbing that formation, which is actually, it's a tricky formation for your left hand because of the 2 whole steps in between your 3 and 4 and your 2 and 3. So left elbow has to come all the way in to enable that to happen. So going very slowly. So what I'm doing from measure 66 is I'm always getting all 3 fingers ready, even though I don't play the bottom note right away. So I'm getting F, C, and A ready. And then all 3 here. So that when we play it fast, it's pretty seamless. So as you can see at that tempo, there's actually no time to play that B flat to grab it after the, right when you're supposed to play it. There's just, you need to have it ready. So those were all the spots that I thought were important to go through in this tutorial. And I hope this video is helpful for you, and I hope that it kind of inspires you to take this Caprice to the next level, or even just to start learning it if you were unsure about it. All of these pieces have like tremendous potential for personal growth in our playing. No matter how they sound in the end, they're just, they really challenge us in a different way. So I wish you the best with your practicing. Please send me suggestions if you'd like to hear a tutorial on a different Caprice for next time. I'm open to suggestions, and I always read your comments and love to hear what you have to say. Or if you have other videos that you would like to share with me, it's really great to have that exchange. So thanks again.